Hello everyone, so today we're going to be looking at A4.2, which is Conservation of Biodiversity in IB Biology. I want to start off with a question. Let's see if you know the answer, which is how should conservation efforts be approached? I'll let you think about it, but I'm going to give out the answer now, so pause if you do want to think about it. The answer is A, which is that they should be targeted because the biodiversity crisis is now too large. If you didn't know the answer to that, you're probably going to want to watch the rest of the video. If you did, you're also going to want to watch the rest of the video because it's always good to review. So starting off, what's biodiversity? So biodiversity is variety of life in all its forms, levels, and combinations. So we have biodiversity in ecosystems, so different species living in different environments. Then we also have biodiversity within different species. So different species are obviously quite different. And then also within the same species, we have diversity. So this is genetic. Not all humans are the same. That's biodiversity. Right now, there's less than 2 million species that have been described, but we know there's many more that remain undiscovered. If you look at the chart, there have been 5 mass extinctions where many species disappeared. So these were due to volcanic activity, asteroid collision, and climate changes. And then between each extinction, biodiversity rises gradually. There hasn't been one for 66 million years. And so biodiversity is now probably at its highest point ever from what we can tell from fossil evidence. However, we are causing what is expected to be the 6th mass extinction, which leads me on to the anthropogenic species extinction. So what the hell does anthropogenic mean? It means derived from human activities. Think of the word anthropology, right? So current rates of extinction are super high, and the 5 main causes can be attributed to humans. So we have overharvesting, which means obtaining plants or animals faster than they can reproduce, for example, fishing, overfishing. Habitat destruction, so habitats such as forests are destroyed for agriculture. Then we also have invasive species, which are introduced artificially and can drive native species to extinction. This can happen because of the global travel that happens constantly. Pollution, so chemical industries pollute massively by burning fossil fuels. Then we have agriculture, mining, pharmaceuticals, etc. And climate change, as we know, human activities are causing very rapid changes in temperature, rainfall, etc. And some species might not be able to adapt, thus becoming extinct. Some examples that we have here. So giant moas were only in New Zealand, but they were hunted to extinction. So that's an example of overharvesting. Then Caribbean monk seals were, again, overhunted for oil and meat and are now extinct. And then the Mount Glorious torrent frog went extinct because of deforestation, which destroyed its habitat as they lived in forests. And also invasive species played a part. The way to remember this, POHIC, right? There's a lot of lists in this topic, so try and use mnemonic techniques to remember them. So POHIC is a good one. Another one is ecosystem loss, so which is quite similar, right? But there are some different causes here. Human activity has also caused the loss of natural ecosystems. For example, the land use change. This can be for agricultural expansion, for urbanization, or for mining. Also water diversion, so this is changing the course of rivers for human uses. Over exploitation of natural resources such as wood or fishing as well. So over harvesting would be a part of this. Pollution from industrial activity again, and climate change. So very, very similar. Just remember all of these as a whole. I think that's easier. So we have some case studies here of ecosystem loss. So to the left, we have mixed dipterocarp forest. That's found in Southeast Asia. But the problem is it's very profitable because it's timber. Is very, very easy to get and very profitable. So it has been targeted legally and illegally. So now there's almost no mixed dipterocarp forest. And actually a lot of it is converted to oil palm plantations. The worst problem actually is that when you change the forest to something else, such as a plantation, all the peat that's in the ground releases CO2 into the atmosphere, contributing more and more to climate change. And then to the right, we have the Aral Sea. So this is between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and it was the 4th largest lake in the world. However, 2 of the major rivers that fed it were diverted for agriculture, leading it to become a desert, as you can see on the right-hand side. And actually, this has made salinity, so the level of salt in the water, rise from 1% to 22%, making all the species of fish there extinct, which is very, very sad. So, one question to recap. What are human activities driving species extinction? Again, pause now to think, but the answer is A, it's over-harvesting, pollution, and habitat destruction. As we saw, the fourth and third mass extinction were not caused by humans, they were natural. And then D, nutrition just makes no sense. That's not a human activity that causes species extinction directly, although over-harvesting surely is. Great, so now let's look at biodiversity crises. So although this term is used a lot, to actually say that there's a biodiversity crisis, it's important to know that you need evidence for this. So places you can get this evidence is the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Well, that's a mouthful. And they produce reports on this. But another approach is to just monitor directly. So you can look at population sizes or the diversity of species in ecosystems, the area occupied by an ecosystem, the range of species, which is the area they occupy, etc., etc. So you can just do manual surveys. However, the main takeaway is that now rates of extinction are about 1,000 times higher than normal. This is crazy, obviously, and to avert this crisis, we must moderate human activities that are causing this species extinction and ecosystem loss. So hunting, urbanization, deforestation, pollution, spread of alien species, we've talked about this. And a major problem is that actually the human population is increasing at a very rapid rate. So we are now over 8 billion people when in 1920, as you can see, there were only 2 billion, and this is unsustainable because it leads to more of those practices to keep us all on Earth. So, how do we conserve biodiversity? Well, the important thing is that there's no single method that's sufficient. Actually, ideally, whole areas of planet Earth should be left in wilderness, and this can be done through protecting areas with national parks or nature reserves. So we have in situ conservation. So this is conserving species and their natural habitats. It ensures that it lives in the environment to which it's adapted, and also in this way it won't start to adapt to different conditions, thus becoming a different species. Actually, costs for this can be really low if the wildlife reserve is in a good state because it requires low human intervention. However, sometimes nature reserves do have to be managed. So that's nature reserve management to remove alien species or reintroducing species that are locally extinct, etc. Then we have rewilding, which is taking damaged ecosystems back to their natural state. So for example, reforestation. Then ex situ conservation are zoos and botanical gardens. And finally, germplasm storage is having seed banks for plants or egg and sperm banks for animals so that they could be made if they became extinct. And finally, and this is the first question that I asked at the start, quite sneaky, is that conservation efforts have to be targeted, where the benefits are likely to be largest. Just because of the scale of the biodiversity crisis, it's impossible to target every single endangered species. So the two criteria that are followed are that they have to be evolutionarily distinct and globally endangered. So evolutionarily distinct means that they have to be quite different to anything that's out there. So some species are actually the last members of a clade that's existed for tens or hundreds of millions of years. So efforts should be put into that rather than a species that might have a very similar species. That's so they share a lot of similarities. So losing it would not be as big of a problem as losing a species to which there's nothing even closely related. And then globally endangered, well, they have to be endangered for the conservation efforts to target them. So this forms what's called EDGE, EDGE. Again, a lot of acronyms here and mnemonic techniques, but remember EDGE. It's actually called the Edge of Existence Project, and it has these two criteria. Great, so this brings me to the end of A4.2. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next week when we'll start Maths AA.